Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
So we heard from the DNI and the FBI. They said Iran and Russia got their hands on voter information. Andrew, what does that mean, voter information? How invasive do we believe this can be? What can they do with this kind of information?
Well, that's a really good question, Chris. It's not clear from the statements we got at the press conference tonight exactly how the Iranians or the Russians access voter information. There is some voter information that's pretty easily acquired online. That's very different from actually probing the voter registration databases of individual states and staging a cyber intrusion into those systems and stealing information. That's the sort of activity that we saw back in 2016. We know the Russians probed the voter registration databases of every state. If that's what's happening here, and again, it's not clear that that's not how they described it, altering voter registration information can be a very serious threat because you could essentially eliminate many people from the voter rolls, and then when they show up on election day, they don't get to cast a vote.
Right.
But the statement was pretty vague, just simply said that they had acquired voter information.
Jim, first of all, great to see you. Thank you for being on the show tonight. And the idea of what Andrew is talking about, that this was a little vague, does that mean they're still developing an understanding of this situation, or is this about also how much you tell the American public about the risk?
Well, unfortunately, Chris, you have to wonder about what were the ulterior motives at work here. Why a sudden press conference, which evidenced itself on the heels of President Obama's pretty stark speech. So
good. I'm glad you said it, Jim, because I didn't want to seem cynical about it. But the timing is a little curious, right? They've known about these emails. They could have told us about this. They could have fleshed more of it out so that it wasn't so vague about what they were able to pass on, and yet it came tonight. It's interesting, Jim, that you see that as a little suspicious as well.
Well, I do, just given the track record of DNI Ratcliffe, where he's used intelligence for political purposes. So, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but you have to address what he says with some skepticism. And just to add on to what Andy said about what happened in 2016, the Russians, we saw, reconnoitered, I'll put it that way, voter registration rolls, which weren't all that hard to penetrate. We saw, I think, some 39 states, and they probably did it with all 50. So they know how to do it, and I remember our speculating about what the purpose was, for some future use. So just a historical note here. The other thing about the statement that the DNI made was that you just mentioned Russia and then went on to Iran. Well, Russia has been interfering in the run-up to the election all along, so that's not a startling revelation. And he didn't amplify that. And I would continue to believe that Russia poses far more of a threat And I think we're going to see more of this. And as to the ascription that this somehow hurts President Trump, well, I can make a case that it helps him.
Well, certainly the Proud Boys stuff helps him because it's scaring people who obviously were sent messages because they didn't vote for him. What I found a little unusual, I'll bounce it back to Andy, and then obviously, Jim, whatever you want to add, please. We have the emails. I reported on them last night with one of our reporters about what we had learned so far. No proof offered of the intentions to hurt Trump. Well, why not? You know that this is going to be something where people are only going to want to know what you can show. You showed the emails. Why didn't you show what supposedly was being put out there that was bad for Trump? They had to know if you don't put out any proof, it smacks of politics.
It really does. And I'll tell you from my own experience, having been through the process with Director Clapper in 2016, the intelligence community doesn't come out with an official analytical judgment along the lines of, the Iranians were trying to hurt President Trump without rock solid evidence to prove that. And we got none of that evidence tonight from DNI Ratcliffe, who has proven himself to be a overtly political influence on the intelligence process with the things that he's been, involved in over the last couple of weeks, releasing intelligence for political purposes. So it's hard to imagine how the two instances he cited in his comments actually hurt President Trump. The Proud Boys issue that you mentioned, and also he said that there was indications that Iran had a video that implied that people could cast fraudulent ballots from overseas. That also supports a main line of President Trump's argument that the election could be replete with fraud. So I am not buying it at this point. I think we should all kind of have a skeptical eye at that until we see some proof.
Right. And also, look, you guys are a blessing tonight because you represent the two schools that were out there tonight, the two different institutions. And Jim, not only did they not offer any proof, but there are two other suggestions. One, Wray did not echo, the head of the FBI did not echo what Ratcliffe said. He did not talk about the threat posed by Iran, and he doubled down, because he'd said this before, on don't believe internet reports about votes not counting or the election being messed with. Now, here's the weird part about that. We don't need Iran or Russia to plant that idea in our head. The president bangs on it all the time. What's more menacing to people's state of mind than their own leader telling them that it's fraudulent?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing. Another unfortunate dimension of this is that unfortunately, these foreign narratives agree with the president and vice versa. That's really unfortunate. But the bigger point here, Chris, to me, is that it would really be nice if we could just take at face value when the Director of National Intelligence and the Director of FBI come out at a special, quickly called press conference. And it would be so nice if we could just accept what they said at face value and not spend all this time parsing and trying to analyze what's really going on. And that, to me, is a sad commentary.
And then some more sad commentary. The Washington Post has reporting, Andy, that the president is increasingly upset with Christopher Wray and thinking about replacing him as the head of the FBI. This can't help because I'm sure he didn't like that he wasn't in line with the DNI tonight. And he doesn't probably, again, this is just crazy world that we're living in. But yes, these words are about to come out of my mouth. The president of the United States probably didn't like the head of the FBI saying not to worry about our election being fraudulent. Your votes will count. That is a bizarro world, but that is Trump's disposition. He wants people not to trust the count. What does that mean if he were to get rid of Wray over something like this? You don't think he'd do it before the election?
Well, I think it's unlikely he'll do it before the election. But, really anything is possible with this president at any moment. What do we know about this president? We know that he really doesn't like it when the people who work for him say things that he disagrees with or things that he finds to be uncomfortable. Chris Wray went on national television in this press conference and made statements that directly contradict the president's false narrative about fraud in voting fraud and electoral fraud. That is not going to be taken well by this president. I can tell you from personal experience, he does not like it when people don't toe the political line that he prefers. So even if the election doesn't go his way, it is possible that he comes in after the election and removes the director simply out of spite.
Hey, Jim, last question, and I'll let you guys go. Thank you so much on such a busy night. Do you think it makes it more or less likely that the president has been outspoken about wanting the attorney general to investigate Biden even after the DOJ passed on its latest investigation in terms of bringing any charges about unmasking, and that him saying he wants Director Wray at the FBI to investigate Biden, do you think that actually makes it less likely that it happens because it would look so overtly political?
Well, exactly. And it seems to me it's sort of from the president's perspective, it's sort of counterproductive for his purposes to say things like that, which I just don't think are going to happen. In fact, the attorney general said so. So I don't understand. Well, like so many things, I don't understand about the president, why he's doing that. How that helps his cause.
How could you have ever believed we would be having a conversation on national television about foreign adversaries doing things to interfere in the election that are less damaging than what our own president has been saying about our election process?
It is Thursday, the 22nd of October of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. Oh my, speaking of spice, Rudy. You know, he should have got one of those untuck-it shirts, then he wouldn't have had to tuck it in. He wouldn't have had to lay back on that bed and tuck his shirt in if he had worn one of those untuck-it shirts. Rudy, come on, join the 21st century. Yikes. Okay. You know, he just to put this whole incident to bed, so to speak. Rudy claims that Borat's scene there with him was a total fabrication, which I agree with. It was totally fabricated because Rudy was convinced that the 24-year-old Bulgarian actress was really a 15-year-old being passed around. That's what Rudy thought. The fabrication, well, Rudy believed the fabrication, so therefore it was a totally fabricated. Indeed. Well, we all suspected something was going on, the way that they talked about certain QAnon theories of child abduction, because when you think about it, 545 kids do not have parents right now because they were abducted by Trump. Well, on Trump's orders. So we do have child abductions. It's just that it's being done by this government, and it just happens to be brown and black kids being abducted, taken from their parents. What's going to happen to them? Well, you know, in Latin America, when military juntas took over, the first thing they would do was confiscate the kids of their opponents and adopt them out to the generals and the hierarchy of the ruling party. In fact, it became a cliche. So I was wondering who taught them that? The School of the Americas? Or did the School of Americas learn it from them? The mind reels trying to figure out that chicken and egg argument, eh? The fact remains is that 545 kids are without parents right now. And 545 parents, well, let's say two, let's double that, just, because, are without their children. And they don't know where they are, neither group. And the United States of America perpetrated this abduction. And you would think, we have enough Germanic in us. We always keep lists. We didn't keep a list. Oh, that's right. Stephen Miller. Santa Monica Gerbil Stephen Miller. He knows One of the great complaints is that, the Nazis would have gotten away with it if they hadn't written everything down. One would hope that some major changes are made when we finally get to take the Oval Office back from Vlad and Donnie. Then you got, we actually addressed that at the top about DNI Ratcliffe. Yeah, they're going to fix the lie, aren't they? Oh, everything that's being done for this election interference is to hurt Trump. Really now? Really? I don't know how intimidating Democratic voters, hurts Trump. I really don't. People are going to vote for Trump or not vote for Trump because, they were told to vote for Trump? Wow, come on. I don't know. This guy, DNI Ratcliffe, obviously a political crony. And you could see that Chris Wray kind of wanted, I'm not agreeing to any of this. And there were a bunch of other law enforcement mucky mucks there, too, who didn't say a thing. I did see a couple of eye rolls, though. They tried to hide them, but those eyes were rolling. Oh, my. Well, DNI Ratcliffe was giving information for only one member in the audience, and we know who that one is. Yeah, the guy that has all that orange makeup on a mask. He wears a black mask, so the orange makeup doesn't show up as much. It still does show up, but not as much. Well, there is much more to deconstruct out there, but we do have a curated show for you, and maybe we should let you know what that is. Well, we will. On the rest of the menu, after, of course, you already, were acquainted with DNI Ratcliffe's gambit. I don't think it's his gambit. He's just the messenger. That's right, just the messenger. On the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, the arch-conservative Thomas More Society is already planning on challenging election results because municipalities got money to administer the polls. Oh, how evil. How evil. Yeah. Well, they don't like voting because when people vote, they usually don't vote Republican. Lindsey Graham wants to investigate everyone who has donated to his opponent, Jamie Harrison. And because Lindsey can't believe that people who are, donating $20, where's all this money coming from? What is that? Where's Act Blue getting their money? Well, I got to tell you, Act Blue records every donation, even the ones they're not required to report, even those small ones around $20. And House Republicans want Amtrak to investigate Joe Biden for chartering trains like he's some sort of wise guy. What's he doing chartering trains? There's something wrong with that. And Amtrak, they want Amtrak to smear Joe Biden, like a quid pro quo. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Polish academics protested the country's new religious fundamentalist education minister. Yeah, they have one of those too. And the Trump administration desperately appealed to countries to withdraw their support for the UN nuclear ban treaty. Yeah, they don't want nukes banned. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room, of course, is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link that is really near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then hopefully notice the link to our Patreon page. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink even in these times of peril, and you could afford to send those funds our way once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars beyond compare, because that's what we do. We are experts, and we pay our bills. We fly under the radar and, well, really continue resisting as the founders originally intended, oh, so long ago. And we thank you for your generosity in the future, and we thank those who have been so generous all these many years. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom, for taking care of that, and thank you for everything else as well. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And then I post that up on social media because, of course, that's what you do. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. Okay, our snoozing sous chef is snoozing away because that's his job, all right? He works hard during the day, sleeping and playing. And, when I need a sous chef, well, he's there to snooze, and that is his job. And we love him for it, too. Okay, which reminds me, I don't know why it reminds me, but some guy by the name of Cardillo, right-winger, maggot, writes for Newsmax. Used to be a cop, an NY police guy. And he posted a picture, a very nice, loving picture, black and white, of Joe and Hunter hugging each other. And the tag that this guy put out was, "Is this an appropriate father-son interaction to you?" Wow. Well, yeah, it is. And, of course, the guy got dragged because apparently he had been abused as a child, or maybe he had abused his own kids. Well, the mind reels. I mean, there are cliches about cops and all. I mean, come on. Okay, well, it kind of brought back memories of my own son and I because we were very affectionate and demonstrative in our affection. It was okay. We should all be more affectionate and loving. Only on the other side is that considered a weakness. Oh, yes, a weak. We don't want loving people. Yeah, I know. You want bullies because they're so strong. All right. Well, I got to tell you, the loving, affectionate people see bullies. And, I got to tell you, we recognize the essential weakness that causes them to be bullies anyway. Do we embrace them? Well, I suppose after, you got to sort of use a little bit of tough love sometimes. All right, let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it comes out of the American Independent. And the Associated Press actually put this together, but comes our way through the American Independent. A national conservative group may challenge the outcome of the November 3rd elections by arguing that municipalities are improperly using hundreds of millions of dollars in private money to administer the polls, a lawyer for the group said. Attorney Eric Cardell argued during a court hearing in Iowa that local officials have impermissibly accepted grants from the Center for Tech and Civic Life to help pay for election staffing, training, equipment, and other expenses. Oh, no. Cardell is an attorney for the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society. How dare they? A conservative group that is representing plaintiffs in lawsuits seeking to block municipalities in several states from using the grants. On Tuesday, federal judges in Iowa and Texas rejected the group's arguments, joining courts in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan that have done the same in recent days. Similar lawsuits are pending in Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Georgia. In Texas, District Judge Amos Mazant denied the group's request for a temporary restraining order to block 4 counties, including Harris and Dallas, from using the election grants. He said the group will not be injured if more people vote because of the private election funding. This is not a harm. That is democracy, he wrote. And of course, the Thomas More Society hates democracy and hates Americans. Is that hyperbole? Well, I don't know. Is it? In Iowa, U.S. District Judge Leonard Strand rejected a request to block 2 counties from using the grant, saying it, quote, has not demonstrated any chance of prevailing on the merits, end quote. By contrast, he said blocking the funding would hinder the county's ability to run the election and undermine voting rights. Still, the lawsuits could set the stage for long-shot post-election litigation for conservatives seeking to challenge the outcome. You know, they can never win by playing by the rules. They have never been able to win by playing by the rules, only by cheating. The Thomas More Society argues that the grants, which were funded through a $300 million donation from Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan, would disproportionately favor progressives, even though they have been made available to all municipalities nationwide. And those municipalities that didn't want the grants are the ones that don't want people to vote. So why would they take the grant? To get people to vote. The Center for Tech and Civic Life describes itself as a nonpartisan organization backed by Democrats, Republicans, and independents. It says more than 2,100 election administrators have applied for the grants. We are confident that these frivolous charges are without merit and look forward to continuing this critical grant program in these unprecedented times, the Chicago-based group said in a statement. Election officials say more funding is needed to ensure safe elections during the coronavirus pandemic. The grants have been used to expand mail-in and early voting, recruit poll workers, and purchase personal protective equipment. Oh no, can't have that. Trump is trying to spread this virus so more people get it, more people die, and less people vote. U.S. District Judge Paul Maloney in Michigan rejected the allegation that the center targets progressive areas, saying its grants are going to municipalities of all political majorities. He rejected a request to block the cities of Lansing and Flint from using the grants. Cardell argued in Iowa that running federal elections is a core governmental responsibility that needs to be exclusively publicly funded, and that's why Trump's government has defunded the elections. Good old Lindsey Graham has rushed through that vote for Amy Coney Barrett's nomination and placement on the Supreme Court with no Democratic members of the committee present. Because, well, you know, Lindsey's all about process and all about the rules, and he makes up the rules and violates process when it serves his purpose. That's why he's so upset that his opponent, Jamie Harrison, is out raising more money than he is, even with all that Russian help. You know, he was promised more Deripaska money, apparently, and he hasn't been getting it. Or maybe he has. And Jamie Harrison is still out raising him because, hey, this is America. And you know what? Americans live in America. This offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays is by Josh Israel out of the American Independent. Senator Lindsey Graham demanded an investigation into how Democrats are raising so much money against him. Graham has been badly outraised by his Democratic opponent, Jamie Harrison, $57 million to $28 million. Where's all this money coming from? Where's Zach Blue getting this money from? How easy would it be to just have a bunch of prepaid credit cards? He said in an interview with The Hill, which makes me think, wow, I guess the Russians have been given enough money with the prepaid credit cards then, huh? Well, where's all this money coming from? You don't have to report it if it's below $200 when this election is over with. I hope there will be a sitting down and a finding out. Okay, how do we control this? It seems to be an endless spiral. Well, I am sorry, but, since you have all the dark money on your side for how many decades now? I'm sorry, but we're going to be transparent with our $20 donations, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. Act Blue is a legal, democratic online fundraising platform that allows individuals to contribute to candidates and causes. As The Hill notes, the site reports all of its donations to the Federal Election Commission, even those that are below the $200 annual disclosure threshold required by federal election law, and requires donors to identify themselves, their addresses, their employers, and their occupations. And when you ask a Republican where they got their money, they can't tell you, because if they told you, then those people would be harassed by evil Democratic donors. We can't let you know. Indeed, Republicans who have long trailed Democrats at online small dollar fundraising made a big deal of launching their own similar platform last year. That system, called WinRed, is currently in use on Graham's own campaign re-election website with a virtually identical interface. Act Blue has raised an impressive $1.5 billion with a B dollars this election cycle, substantially more than the $625.5 million Republicans have raised on WinRed. A Graham spokesman did not immediately respond to an inquiry for this story because that's how Lindsey is. This is not the first time that Graham has baselessly suggested that something nefarious was going on with Democratic fundraising against him. At last week's Supreme Court confirmation hearing, he suggested he may soon support new campaign finance regulations, complaining, "I don't know what's going on out there, but I can tell you there's a lot of money being raised in this campaign. I'd like to know where the hell some of it's coming from." Well, all you have to do is look at the report, Lindsey. That's awfully rich coming from you, Lindsey. Yeah, we'd like to know where the money is coming from, because I got to tell you, the Democratic side reports everything. And your side, Lindsey, reports nothing. Just a periodic reminder, I do take great poetic liberties with this news. So I do add my own indelible touch, and I would suggest that you do go to the show notes and links and get the actual reportage, because we can't blame these reporters for, well, my indelible take, can we? This next offering comes out of the American Independent by the outstanding and fabulous Oliver Willis. House Republicans called on Amtrak to start an investigation into Vice President Joe Biden's use of a charter Amtrak train and push the agency to deliver the results on the day before this year's election. How many campaign hatch violations has Trump committed? And they're going to whine about Joe taking Amtrak, which he's taken since he became an elected official. Biden took a tour of several states in the Rust Belt in late September and early October. Biden has long been closely associated with Amtrak since, as a senator, he frequently rode the train between D.C. and Delaware. Biden has estimated that he has ridden 2.1 million miles on the train in his lifetime. The Amtrak station in Wilmington, Delaware, is even named after Biden. On their most recent expenditure report, the Biden campaign reported that it had spent $265,000 to lease the train. The letter from the minority members of a subcommittee of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee was signed by Representatives Rick Crawford, Repug of Arkansas, Bob Gibbs, Repug of Ohio, and, Scott Perry, Repug of Pennsylvania, and Lloyd Smucker, another Repug from Pennsylvania. We are concerned that the Biden's campaign use of Amtrak's charter train redirected Amtrak's scarce resources during a time of record losses, employee layoffs, and service cuts during the COVID-19 pandemic, they tearfully wrote. Oh, the tear stains were still wet on the document. Oh, they were so emotionally taken with helping Amtrak that they have systematically defunded. So they continued, we are concerned that the apparent use of a struggling, resource-deprived, publicly run service for political gain does not serve the best interests of Amtrak or the American taxpayers at this time. The Republicans asked the agency to provide information on the charter no later than November 2nd, 2020. And of course, we know Election Day is on November 3rd. I might tell people that actually Election Day is not on November 3rd. That's the day that the election ends, that you can actually vote. Because people are voting now, okay? Election Day has already happened. Despite the purported concern expressed for Amtrak by his Republican allies, Trump's most recent budget called for a 50% reduction in federal subsidies for the rail service. The congressional letter echoes rhetoric from Trump, which has attempted to weaponize the government in service of his re-election. Indeed. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Julia Rosen. We all know the story. 66 million years ago, a giant asteroid crashed into Earth, killing off 3/4 of all species, including most of the dinosaurs. Researchers suspect that the impact caused the extinction by kicking up a cloud of dust and tiny droplets called aerosols that plunged the planet into something like a nuclear winter.
And these components in the atmosphere drove global cooling and darkness that would have stopped photosynthesis from occurring, ultimately shutting down the food chain.
Shelby Lyons, a recent PhD graduate from Penn State University. But scientists have also found lots of soot in the geologic layers deposited immediately after the asteroid impact, and the soot may have been part of the killing mechanism too, depending on where it came from. Some of the soot probably came from wildfires that erupted around the planet following the impact, but most of these particles would have lingered in the lower atmosphere for only a few weeks and wouldn't have had much of an effect on global climate. But scientists hypothesize that soot may also have come from the very rocks that the asteroid pulverized when it struck. If those rocks contain significant amounts of organic matter, such as the remains of marine organisms, it would have burned up on impact, sending soot shooting up into the stratosphere. In that case, soot would have spread around the globe in a matter of hours and stayed there for years, and it would have radically altered Earth's climate. So Lyons and her team set out to identify the source of the soot. They looked at chemicals known as polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or PAHs, which are another byproduct of combustion.
So you can find PAHs in meat or veggies that you grill. You can find them from the exhaust of a car. You can also find them in smoke and debris from the wildfires today out west.
PAHs are made up of fused rings of carbon atoms. Think of chicken wire. To determine the origin of the soot, the researchers looked at the structure and chemistry of the PAHs buried along with it. Specifically, the researchers looked for groups of atoms that stick off the rings like spikes. PAHs generated from burning wood don't have many spikes, but PAHs from burning fossil carbon, like what would have been in the target rocks, have more. Lyons and her team found that most of the PAHs deposited after the impact were spiky, which suggests that soot from the rocks hit by the asteroid played a major role in the mass extinction.
There was more dust and more sulfate aerosols than soot, but soot is a stronger blocker of sunlight than either of those two. So a small amount of soot can drive large reductions in sunlight.
The findings are in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. The results suggest that the devastation of this very sooty asteroid impact may be due in part to a fluke of geography. The space rock smashed into the Gulf of Mexico, where the sediments were rich in organic matter. They still are. The region produces large amounts of oil today.
Where it had occurred was likely one of the reasons that it led to a major mass extinction. It was kind of the perfect storm, or the perfect asteroid impact, I guess you could call it.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Julia Rosen.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day that the bank robber known as Pretty Boy Floyd was gunned down by federal agents in Ohio. He was born Charles Arthur Floyd in 1904 in Georgia. His family moved to Oklahoma when he was a boy. Like many Oklahomans during this era, he fell on hard economic times. Floyd turned to crime. He did a 4-year stretch in a Missouri prison for payroll robbery. When he got out, he tried to get a job in the Oklahoma oil fields. Unable to find work, Floyd took up bank robbing. He robbed banks in Kentucky, Ohio, and Missouri. He got caught and convicted in Ohio, but escaped on his train trip to prison. He made his way back to Oklahoma. There he became a folk hero. Locals called him the Robin Hood of the Cookson Hills. Legend had it that Floyd destroyed mortgage papers when he robbed banks, winning him friends among farmers reeling from the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. Floyd became a national fugitive when he was accused of killing federal agents in Kansas City. He denied he was ever involved in the killings. J. Edgar Hoover, head of the U.S. Bureau of Investigation, named Floyd public enemy number 1. Finally, the law caught up with Floyd in an Ohio cornfield. His body was returned to Oklahoma, where as many as 40,000 came to his funeral. Woody Guthrie remembered Floyd in song.
But many a starving farmer, the same old story told, how the outlaw paid their mortgage and saved their little home.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Others tell you about a stranger that come to beg a meal. Underneath his napkin left $1,000 bill.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
An intelligence briefing announced as a press conference hastily called Wednesday afternoon after reports of threatening emails to Democratic voters in 4 states surfaced. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe said that Iran is behind the messages, made to look like they came from the Trump-supporting far-right, white supremacist neo-fascist group, the Proud Boys. Ratcliffe said that both Iran and Russia have, quote, taken specific actions to influence public opinion relating to our elections. Then FBI Director Chris Wray took to the microphone, but he didn't seem to reference any of the claims made by Ratcliffe. Many are calling out the odd timing of the announcement and the fact that no questions were allowed. Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee voted Thursday morning to advance Judge Amy Coney Barrett's Supreme Court nomination after Democrats boycotted the hearing. The panel voted 12-0 to send Barrett's nomination to the full Senate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and the Democrats on the committee released a joint statement on Wednesday, calling Republicans' push to confirm Barrett before Election Day a sham process that violated the promises and rules they established when they blocked then-President Barack Obama's nomination of Merrick Garland, also in an election year. The statement reading in part, quote, fearing a loss at the ballot box, Republicans are showing that they do not care about the rules or what the American people want. They added that they would not grant this process any further legitimacy by participating after tens of millions of Americans have already voted. Unfortunately, the committee can advance the nomination to the full Senate as long as 12 members are present. The Republicans met that threshold by all showing up. And a final floor vote of the full Senate is now scheduled for Monday. Lovely. By the way, Barrett did release answers to follow-up questions from the Senate, but as with her testimony, she was extremely vague. She refused to say whether voter fraud is a widespread problem in U.S. elections. It isn't. And whether restrictive voter ID laws suppress the vote in poor and minority communities. They do. And new information has come to light. Republican senators are now defending Barrett following this new report from the Associated Press that highlights her previous position on the board of a private Christian school system that has anti-LGBTQ policies. Mitch McConnell, of course, called the fallout from the report anti-religious bigotry. Well, former President Barack Obama hit the campaign trail on Wednesday and blasted Donald Trump in a speech in Philadelphia.
Joe knows that the first job of a president is to keep us safe from all threats, foreign, domestic, or microscopic. When the daily intelligence briefings flash warning signs about a virus, a president can't ignore them. He can't be AWOL. Just like when Russia puts bounties on the heads of our soldiers in Afghanistan, the commander-in-chief can't be missing in action.
Calling him out on his claim that he couldn't be handling the pandemic much better.
I get that this president wants full credit for the economy he inherited and zero blame for the pandemic that he ignored. But you know what? The job doesn't work that way. Tweeting at the television doesn't fix things. Making stuff up doesn't make people's lives better. You've got to have a plan. You've got to put in the work. We literally left this White House a pandemic playbook that would have shown them how to respond before the virus reached our shores. We don't know where that playbook went. 8 months into this pandemic, cases are rising again across this country. Donald Trump isn't suddenly going to protect all of us. He can't even take the basic steps to protect himself. Just last night, he complained up in Erie that the pandemic made him go back to work. If he'd actually been working the whole time, it never would have gotten this bad.
Obama also couldn't resist calling Trump out over a new report about a bank account in China.
We know that he continues to do business with China because he's got a secret Chinese bank account. Can you imagine if I had a secret Chinese bank account? You think Fox News might have been a little concerned about that? They would have called me Beijing Barry. It is not a great idea to have a president who owes a bunch of money to people overseas. Of the taxes Donald Trump pays, he may be sending more to foreign governments than he pays in the United States.
Reminder, the final debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden is Thursday night, beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern, moderated by NBC's Kristen Welker. In COVID news, the U.S. reported more than 1,000 new deaths on Wednesday, the highest daily death toll in more than a month. According to new footage from a forthcoming documentary, Pope Francis endorsed same-sex civil unions for the first time as Pope. The film had its premiere at the Rome Film Festival on Wednesday. Francis has suggested in the past that he's not against civil unions, but this is the first time he's directly come out in favor of them as Pope. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. You know, it's a little bit of jambalaya and a little bit of spice in your life. Well, we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, we had been under an active freeze warning from late last night, and it looks like it will be continuing till about 9 a.m. Indeed. So I took the necessary precautions. I brought all the hanging baskets down and put them in the greenhouse, because I have one of those, and a few of the other delicate plants, and a really nice little pine tree that might be a bit delicate and needs to establish before it can survive a freeze. So the necessary precautions were taken, because that's what you got to do. Okay. Well, it looks like we're going to have sunshine and clouds mixed today with a high of only around 60 to 63. Winds will be light and variable. They did blow a bit yesterday. Some clouds tonight, lows, about 34, which could be 30. And winds will be light and variable. Sunny tomorrow with a high around 70, along with a few afternoon clouds, winds light and variable. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County, in the southern part of Oregon, experienced the highest one-day spike since the pandemic, and we now stand at 1,155 confirmed cases, with 6 confirmed deceased, but we know what that means. If people died because of a heart attack and they had coronavirus, well, they only died of a heart attack. Those numbers will be increasing in time. Pollen is rated at none right outside the window here at the mothership in Rogue River proper. The region is air quality index is good at 29 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is moderate at 3. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.23 inches. Visibility is at 8 miles, and relative humidity is 97%. Wow. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. They have their P-tapes. I have mine. London is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris, they call it Paris, is 67 and mostly cloudy. Rome, and they call it Roma, is 72 and fair. Kiev, they call it Kiev, is 60 degrees and fair. Some people call it Kiev, but we call it Kiev because that's the way they like it. Once again, they are 60 degrees and fair. Kabul is 60 degrees and fair. Hong Kong is 72 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 64 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 66 and clear. San Francisco, California is 54 degrees and fair. And New York is 65 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased, and these people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Vanessa Guerra of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Activists dressed as security guards climbed onto a balcony of a Polish education ministry building early yesterday, Wednesday, and hung a banner protesting the appointment of a new minister whom they consider to be a religious fundamentalist and a danger to the nation's youth and universities. Many university academics in Poland are protesting the conservative government's appointment of Przemysław Czarnek, who has said that LGBT people aren't equal to normal people. Women were created to produce children, and who has voiced support for corporal punishment. Well, doesn't that beat all?
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Edith Lederer of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The United States is urging countries that have ratified a UN treaty to ban nuclear weapons to withdraw their support as the pact nears the 50 ratifications needed to trigger its entry into force, which supporters say could happen this week. The U.S. letter to signatories, obtained by the Associated Press, says the 5 original nuclear powers, U.S., Russia, China, Britain, and France, and America's NATO allies stand unified in our opposition to the potential repercussions of the treaty. It says that the treaty turns back the clock on verification and disarmament and is dangerous to the half-century-old nuclear non-proliferation treaty considered the cornerstone of global non-proliferation efforts, and the response is that it is all a lie. It does not help nuclear non-proliferation treaty whatsoever. So it's going to be ratified, and the United States can't do a damn thing about it. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know that Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because I think we still have a debate tonight, don't we? Yeah, maybe. And so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.